Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to talk about how to segment your way to excellent ROI. So stay tuned for some practical and really great tips today. Even if you're new to segmentation or you're a segmentation veteran, we've got something for you to take away. Housekeeping rules. As usual when we start, so you can hear us but we can't hear you, unfortunately, but there'll be time for questions at the end. So use the questions panel in the sidebar to ask your questions, or you can take it to Twitter and we'll monitor our feed as well if you prefer to ask questions on social media. And as we get asked this quite often, yes, we are recording the webinar and we will send a follow-up. So if you've got a meeting that is cutting off this amazing insight, don't worry, you'll be able to catch up with it later. A little bit about us before we start. If you're new to our webinars, for over a decade, Adestra has been empowering marketers to achieve their goals and maximize their ROI. We were founded on the principle that marketing success takes more than just technology, and that's why customer service is at the heart of our business. We're not just software as a service, we offer software and a service. And today with you, in case you're wondering who's talking, my name is Anka. I'm a content executive here at Adestra, and I get excited by innovation in the industry. I absolutely love email marketing. But I also like to remind marketers to get the basic strategies right first. I'm a strong advocate of testing, so that goes with my motto, and I think it's the only way to know what really works for your audience. I'm joined today by Rob Amos, who rejoined Adestra last year and is working with clients to put their ideas into practice and advise from a strategic and technical point of view. You might have heard us before on the webinar in February on automation and first-person marketing, so you should know you're in for a treat.
Good afternoon, everyone.
So today, what are we going to cover? Well, we've got quite a bit to take you through. We're going to look at data gathering strategies to enhance your segments, how to organize your database and preferences for best use of segmentation, some tips for you to get started with segmentation if you haven't already, but also some tips on how to, take it to the next level and use advanced segmentation. And lastly, top mistakes to avoid when segmenting your audience. First, we get asked this quite a lot, and we see a lot of articles in the media confusing segmentation and personalization. So how are they different? Segmentation comes first in the process, and personalization is the result. So, segmentation means you put people into similar groups. So you could have golfers, or wine buyers, or golfers who buy wine, or even left-handed golfers who like wine, if you're really, really particular about your segments. Now that's relevance as personalization in its highest form. Personalization, at its most basic, can be as simple as merging the recipient's first name in the subject line or message copy. But come on, we all know that's not enough. Even spammers send you, first name personalization. So don't just mark that checkbox as ticked and you think that first names is, ticking personalization in your workflow. That's what you should be aiming for. Personalization is the destination. And if you want to think, segmentation is the vehicle that gets you there. But to connect the two, you need a fuel, and that fuel is data. Now, apart from being a marketing fundamental, though it's still widely underused, segmentation is on many marketers' minds. In our recent study with e-consultancy that we do every year, so this is our 11th edition, the Email Industry Census, we saw that 91% of marketers use or are planning to use basic segmentation. However, it's also something they're unhappy with. So we do our survey and then present the results with company or in-house marketers and also agency marketers. And we've seen that for both groups, better segmentation is the second one on the wish list. So, they're using it, but they know they could be doing better. But what data do you actually need? I was making the point that personalization is the destination, segmentation is the vehicle, and data is the fuel. So what do you actually need? It's easier said than done to talk about data. Our personalization study showed marketers could be collecting more than they need. So this was from our study with the IDM in October last year. And there's a lot of compliance risk out there. But why is it important? Why should you be caring about it? I mean, we're telling you, get data, but why should you care about only gathering the one you need? Well, a key principle of the Data Protection Act and GDPR, which is now less than a year away, says that personal information should be collected for a specified purpose and that it should be adequate and not excessive. So, if your shop only sells shoes, you shouldn't be asking about someone's trouser size because it's not something that you require. And this means that marketers who harvest data on customers just in case are technically, in a potential breach of the Act if they don't put that information to use in a relevant way. And, for those of you out there who are joining us from outside Europe, global regulations are tightening, like everywhere. So marketers need to be aware of these regardless of where they're based. I know, Castle's been around for a few years and it's tightened the rules. And also if you email subscribers from from inside the European Union, it doesn't matter that your company is based in the US, you still have to abide by European laws. So this is definitely something to keep in mind. So, it's quite surprising to see that, for example, 64% of marketers collect location data, but use it infrequently in their email marketing. So it kind of makes its collection hard to justify, and consumers are getting more and more aware of what data is collected on them. So I think there's a huge change coming in the industry with regards to that. So just as an example, I suppose, of what data you could use if you're in B2B, this study comes from eMarketer, and it was sponsored by BrightTalk, and it shows, most B2B marketers use product or service to segment, 45% of them, followed by bio personas with 33% and vertical by 29%. I'm actually surprised to see bio personas not the first one on the list, because you would think, you have to keep in mind who you're talking to when you send a message. But, what if you segment by pain point? That's lower than the list. Only 22% of marketers use it, and it would be a good way to stand out. So when you're looking for data, you figure out what data you need. How do you go about gathering it? Well, my first tip would be to ask. I know it sounds simple, but I think too many marketers are afraid to ask for data. And you can find the right way to ask, and we'll show you some examples. You can also run competitions. Those tend to be quite well received, with customers sharing more information than they normally would when they just sign up for your email, because they know they might be getting something in return. You can exchange data for an immediate reward, and we'll see later on an example that Rob's going to take us through from Pets Pajamas, where they actually gave something to their audience for exchanging data. And you can do progressive profiling. So, don't ask for it all to begin with, but just sort of drip feed the request for more information.
I think a key thing here as well, you'll already have some data from which you can start to segment around your contacts, and we'll come and look at some of the other areas of what we know about what we might know about our contacts already, but these are good ways of starting to enhance, and the key message running through this is starting small and building up with the progressive profiling.
Yes, definitely. Incremental innovation is something that we're really pushing at Adestra, and we think that you shouldn't be scared to just start with step 1 before you get to step 100. But just to give you an example, this is from one of our clients, University of Birmingham. They had a database of about 5,000 people, and they had collected them over the years through various channels, which I'm sure many marketers are in the situation. But the organization was kind of unsure how to engage this audience because they didn't know much about them. So they didn't know what events they would be interested in, what offers they wanted to hear about. And by not engaging with them, they were potentially wasting the opportunity to bring additional revenue. So what they did was they asked, as I said, simple but efficient. Just to show you, I know it's probably very hard to see what's going on in this picture, but it's essentially there to give you the logic of it, and I'll tell you what it is. It's a re-engagement program encouraging contacts to fill in their preferences with behavioral filters targeting engagement and completion. So essentially what is going on here is University of Birmingham said, please, would like to hear more about you, update your preferences, or unsubscribe altogether if you don't want to hear from us. And then the automation program goes through looking, have they started to complete the form? Yes, okay, we'll send them an email encouraging to finish filling in that form. Have they not started? Okay, we'll send them a reminder to say, please fill in your preferences. This is why it's important. And it just continues checking up until the point that if they've completed, they'll get a thank you email with a coffee coupon, which they can redeem at the venue. So encouraging footfall as well as finding out more data. And if they don't engage throughout the program at all with University of Birmingham, they'll be removed from the list. So, quite a nice program, very nice logic to it. And just to show you some of the examples, so, that's the landing page where they can update their preferences and they can update their personal details, but also, what they want to hear about. Is it film or is it dance? Or is it other discounts and news? That's some of the emails that go through as well from the program, with a really nice animation on the coffee cup, which I think adds a really nice touch. And in terms of progressing profiling, this is a sequence which I personally received when I signed up to Timex emails. Timex is a watch brand, and it has really stayed with me because I haven't been subjected to such a nice progressive profiling program from any other brand. So first, I was promised when I went to the website that I was going to get 15% off my first order. So I signed up to their emails and I got this, simple, short and sweet message saying, welcome, here's your discount code. Then 3 days later, I received another really sweet and to the point email saying, do we have it right? Essentially asking for my gender. Am I a woman or a man? To then segment their emails with different products. And then 5 days later, I got another email saying £5 for your thoughts, so giving me a discount in exchange for the data. And you can sort of see there what postcode sorry, not postcode. I saw that on the image. What sort of data I had to give, including postcode, how many watches I own. So, and I could give as much or as little data as I wanted to, really, and still get the discount. But just making it really, really easy for someone to give you the data and to convert from an email makes it a lot more efficient when you make that ask for the data. And it also means, like I said before, that you don't have to ask for everything up front. All I did to begin with was fill in an email address, and everything else came later. And another one is from Penguin. A key challenge to them is obviously to get close to their readers, understand what sort of books they like to read, and recommend more along those lines, because there's so many books out there that it's really fascinating to discover new ones that you love, but it's also quite off-putting if you find ones that you're not really interested in. So they were looking to build profile book buyers based on their favorite genres, and they tend to email to sort of validate what insight they had and gain more from their customers. And they did this in a very, again, engaging and obvious way. So they sent an email which essentially said, which of these bookshelves appeal most to you, presenting some books in each category. So rather than using, a boring form or just some bullet points, they made it really visual. And I really love that about this example. Because you can, it's very clear and very visual and very easy to engage with. And then this, it seems I'm missing a slide. I'm not entirely sure why, but I'll talk you through it anyway. So this resulted in different newsletters being sent, segmented based on the buyer profile, and they came up with some cool names for their segments as well. So they were chart shoppers, heat seekers, connectors, connoisseurs, pioneers, and thinkers. Really giving your segments a really descriptive name can help across your marketing team, and it can really bring them to life. They managed to recreate the bookshop experience via email. Subscribers, they were promised hand-picked and personalized recommendations, and that's what they got. These emails now achieve an exceptional 59% average open rate, and it's consistently high engagement. It's increased the number of conversions they get as well. And why not? Because people are actually getting something that they're interested in.
Thanks, Anka. I'm going to take you through a little bit of a few considerations around the organising your database and your preferences, and look at some of the data sources that we can use to segment from a more back-end data point of view, and then we can look back at how we can then begin to use these to segment. So an initial consideration is key around what are we trying to achieve amongst all of these goals. Are we looking to increase our business goals? What are our business goals, and are they driving what we call first-person marketing, which you may have heard us speak about before, which is enabling the prediction, testing, and refining to achieve success. Not so much the efficiency in this time, but the intelligence and the performance, and using the data that we can glean from our contacts to drive that personal experience, and coupled with personalization, as we've spoken about in the past, but getting those segments right in the first place. So next up, we can look at some sort of data sources that we might be, considering using. I know that looks like that our data is going into the gents' toilet, but treat that person as a persona or a person within your email system. We can just run through a few of these to understand the kind of data that we can use to segment. Behavioral metrics, what are people doing on those emails? Can we send them down a different path, for example, on an automation sequence for those that aren't engaging on an email? We're creating that segment based on what they've been doing on the email. Demographics, what we know about them, where they are potentially, what they've told us in the sign-up forms or what we've gleaned. Transactions and bookings, anything relational potentially, so this could be sign-ups, transactions, things they bought. We can use that information to create these segments about people have spent a certain amount or people have booked to certain events, and create those segments and start sending them personalized emails. Preferences in its pure form of asking what they want, and going back to Anka's point around asking, what do you want to receive? And we'll come on to some considerations about using these as well very shortly. Location, do we know where these people are? Can we set a radius, for example, around a certain small event that people outside of that 50 miles might not want to go to? Can we create a segment there and send them something? Web intelligence, things that we can glean from third parties, for example, browse history. We can ingest that. Conversions that people have done, abandoned baskets and things like that. Can we create segments through that in its simplest form, send them something to remind them to purchase or sign up or book, whatever it might be, aligning to the business goals. And other channel intelligence, we can look to bring in information from other channels that you're doing. If you've got a more advanced system that can bring in insight from your direct mailing, etc., etc. But that, again, that can be pulled in, set against that person within the database, and then we can use all of these to then create the segments that we need. We'll come into overdoing it a bit later on, but it gives you a lot of insight. And going back to the starting small, you might only have a few of these, but that's when you can start segmenting and building up. So considering your CRM system, do you have that single view? Can you work towards having all your information held against one record and then building up those segments from there? Or have you got disparate sources that you need to consider when creating these segments, so people aren't appearing in the segments that you don't want them to be in? Consider how often it's updated into your CRM. Are you using the most up-to-date information, and consider that flow there? Are you reporting email behavior back to that single customer view? Other areas, other dynamic data might be going straight into your CRM system. When the emails are sent out, we're already learning what their people are doing, the opens and the clicks and so on. So is that being passed back to organize it against that single contact? So you can see, yes, I know where they are and I know their activity on the email. So you consider all the different data sources that the collection sources that you might be using, and then are they writing into that single point? So web sign-up forms and social sign-ups and so on. And there's a wider picture around using social for this as well, which we'll cover in other sessions. And then just basically using those data sources. So we've got all the various ones down there. We've got the basket and we've got the preferences and mobile, other channel stuff and demographics. Are they going into the CRM and are they going into your ESP? And then the little graph next to the ESP is those metrics that would be passing back and forth. Are we getting that single view and creating these segments which are live and ready to use? So creating, I mean, there's many ways that we can segment from here, but just to then start thinking about what we can do, how can we start building these segments? First-time buyers, seasonal buyers, frequent customers, been to events before, VIB customers, those that need a certain little bit of push to get them to react well to emails or certain offers, etc., etc. To start to build up against what you've got, what you know about them, align to the business goals to create those segments which are going to work for you when you're sending out your email campaigns. And then building intelligence as you look to kind of develop this. Start small, build up from what you've got there. But understand how your contacts can update their information, because things will change. Once you've got that initial contact in there with what we know about them, that will update and that will change. And what are expectations are being set? If you're beginning to profile more and doing some progressive profiling, does that sit with the initial sign-up when you're asking for more information? And are you setting the expectations? You're now going to receive this. And we'll come to talk about GDPR shortly, because that's important when we look at progressive profiling. And ensure the intelligence of segments don't isolate. Do not isolate, it should say there, your data into narrow populations. So don't put people into too narrow a population based on some activity they may have done. Make sure they're exposed to everything else you're offering as well, even if the initial message is targeted. And set growth objectives. What are you trying to achieve by doing this? Around the business goals, can you look to build up your open rates by a certain percent and look to set some goals around the metrics, for example? Make sure the user experience flows well. Don't change what people are expecting too much already or ask too much of them in one go. Build it up progressively. And then always a good idea to send them an email to qualify and maybe even consider a double opt-in from that point. And then moving on to the Pets Pajamas example that Anka referenced earlier, where they used an automation program to do exactly that, to progressively profile on pet type. So initial very easy question. No one's going anywhere to have to answer this. They're clicking on a link, a picture of a pet, and then they're moving along the sequence to say which kind of breed you got. And then you're building up what we call pet points, or they call pet points in the background. So you're building up that in the background as well, which you can use to then redeem against items on their site. So it's just a slow, nice process, and they saw a massive increase in all of their key metrics aligned to their business goals, and have done a very successful job on doing that from their point of view.
And the really cool thing about how Pets Pajamas use their loyalty scheme is that they will actually, they'll ask you to share your pet's name, your pet's breed or birthday or any other data that can help them further on in their email, but also marketing segmentation. And in exchange for that, they give you points for their pet point scheme. So as Rob was telling you can redeem against prizes, but just, making the ask and then giving people something immediately in return can make them more willing to share that data.
Exactly, and they've done very well doing that. And just what we did say, and it's not for today, it's for another session, but just when we talk about this profiling, and it's a word around the GDPR side of things, around how you'll need to be giving people the opportunity to opt out of such profiling in the future. But we won't talk about that now, but it's just a consideration and something we're very well aware of and we'll be talking about in the near future.
So we talked a lot about how to organize your database, and Rob took us through some amazing things. And again, to take away from what he was saying is that no matter where you are along your data challenges, you can start small. The ideal, yes, is to have a single customer view, but at least make steps towards that, even if you're not there. To start off sort of our series of tips, let's see how you could start segmenting today if you're completely new to segmentation. Segmentation, as I said before, is a marketing fundamental, and in this study from eConsultancy that they shared on eMarketer, we see segmentation is the fourth one down the list, amongst other things like A/B testing and personalization and customer journey analysis, which are all very hot terms. But we also see that it's delivered really consistent results over the years, and this has been the same in our email industry census, which we've run for 11 years. It's always had really good results, and it's been very effective. In fact, in another study, you see that email list segmentation is the most effective and one of the least difficult on the list. So that's a really encouraging thing to see. Of course, we have behavior triggered emails, which are in the census came up as the #1 focus for 2017, which are also very effective. And of course, responsive email design has been on marketers' minds for many years, and we're hopefully all almost there with it, but still, do not forget of the marketing fundamentals. Do not forget segmentation. So just to give you some examples, #1 suggestion to segment is on clicks and actions, and Rob referenced that. So questions you could ask yourself to find ways to segment is, what was the most popular link in your last newsletter? Could you maybe do something more about that and create, if it was something to do with automation, for example, in that case, could we do a newsletter around automation and send it to the people who are interested in that particular topic? Or who clicked on the self-help book in the summer specials campaign? Maybe those people could benefit from a follow-up campaign adding only self-help books.
Yeah, I think that's key, and I think one of the key messages that we want to again come out is be agile with it as well. You may have set up an automation sequence based on the clicks and what you expect to happen, and then send people down certain routes, but you might see unexpected data, which you can then jump on and create new segments that you can then send them something else. So be aware, keep testing, and remain agile with your segmentation.
Yeah, and your segments, they don't have to stay the same forever and ever. So just because you identified that, you could create a self-help follow-up campaign, it doesn't mean from now on you have to have a series of emails for the self-help lovers. But just creating that follow-up campaign could significantly increase your results. Or you could ask yourself which contacts were interested to read more about your new release, and then think actually maybe they're just really interested in what's new and what we're sharing. Just one of the examples that we've had recently from one of our clients. So this is one of our agency clients, Buzzed Up, and they work with a taxi shop. And they were really focused on building credibility for the brand via a number of channels. So in this particular example, we have email working together with social media. So Buzzed Up created some Facebook advertising to generate qualified inquiries and website traffic, and then took some of the insight from then and combined it with people who had previously expressed an interest in minibus taxis, and then created a segment for that particular product category. They used email communications and lifecycle marketing, as well as lead generation and nurturing in this program. So that was the aim of it. And by combining the two, the campaign, the program was very successful. So it achieved a 26% open rate, 190 clicks to the product, which is great because it generated awareness and it generated interest for future opportunities. So, you might have a lead that's not quite ready to buy now, but they're definitely interested in that product category. And not least of all, it generated 820% ROI from the campaign. So it had a revenue of over £26,000, and the taxi shop were very pleased with kind of short term, so immediate revenue impact, but also long term results in creating that awareness. Okay, number 2, you could use conversion filters. So, have a look at the products that were purchased, and this will come very, very handy as we approach the Christmas or holiday period, which, retailers are starting to prepare for right now. Would those who purchased cars last year be interested in purchasing them again? Or which customers bought bug repellents, as we're still in summer, this time last year and could use another supply because they've run out. When you have products that have a predicted sort of life cycle use and they're renewable, such as ink cartridges or bug repellents. We actually have a really cool case study about this from Harrod Horticultural, who did exactly that. Just segment them and send them a follow-up campaign saying, hey, would you benefit from some more of this? So again, it's not necessarily a segment that you're going to use in your marketing for the whole year, but it's something that you can use to boost results and then benefit from segmentation and see how it can really help you. Or one that we've used ourselves. So I was mentioning the census a lot. We looked at who downloaded the 2016 census last year when it was released, and then this year we created a segment and sent them a separate email saying, we know you were interested in this report last year. You might want to know that the new edition was released, and here's where you can access it. So really simple and really efficient. And so, yeah, just to give you an example, this one's from Parkinson's. What can be easier than doing something like this? There are 2 emails that they look relatively similar, but they have simple tweaks to see whether people who, purchased cards would want to purchase them again, or people who purchased higher value products would be interested in seeing the new range. And this actually, as simple as it looks, led to a record online sales day for Parkinson's. It actually, when they compared the 2 quarters, the holiday quarter, so September to December, their revenue increased by 94%, so almost double.
Yeah, this is a great example of using the segmentation within the content itself. So we're seeing the 2 variants at the top and the products underneath. So they're creating their segments and then using that information to fuel the content of the email with some simple technology around if statements and so on.
And the third one of our series of simple tips would be a stated preference. So going back to the earlier point I was making about compliance risks that we identified, if you're going to ask for someone's data and someone's preference, then you use it in your emails. So in here we have an example from Wyville Garden Centres. They were looking to segment customers who either purchased a children's product in the past or they interacted with related content in their newsletters, so a combination of a purchase filter and click. And they used a dynamic list to pull these people together, and they send them this campaign, which is actually quite, if you subscribe to Wyville Garden Centres, it's very different from their normal creative, but that's what really made it stand out, and it made it immediately obvious as to who the target audience for this was. The message drove 48% more clicks compared to the previous year, and more importantly, it also helped them sell tickets to their event. So against a target of 56%, they actually achieved 60% of ticket sales from this email.
Which made it win our campaign of the month that month, which
Yep.
after that success, you can find other campaigns of the month on our site as well, but that was why they did so well.
Yeah. And other ideas you could have, if your customers are interested in tea offers but not coffee, or again, if you have children, if your customers have children, or if they, would they like to hear more about events and not white papers, and they've told you that, then by all means make sure that you segment based on the preferences that they indicated.
I think one of the preferences that you can ask for alongside what do you want to receive, it's also how often, and creating that kind of building that persona of, especially in the events industry, people might say, well, I'm only interested in, I'm really interested in this event, but I know it's annual, so you might put them on a holiday of emails around other stuff and ask them if they want that experience.
And if you have the basic strategies in place, then it's time to move on to the more advanced ones. Why would you want to use advanced segmentation? Well, marketers that use it are 4% more likely to report excellent ROI than those that don't segment at all. So, it is, if you're willing to put the effort in, then the results will definitely come in. So to kind of move into this advanced segmentation space, let's start looking at some of the types of data we can have. So Rob's spoken about this earlier, but you can have reported data. So this is from customer interactions with your brand, and it could be from your website, or it could be from surveys, competitions. It should help you piece together the journey that a customer may take, starting with the welcome email. So, think when they interact with your messages, do they jump straight to the sales section, for example? Or again, use progressive profiling to kind of fill in the data gaps. If you see that you have some interactions, but you're not quite sure where this reported data is leading you, it can give you real insight into what motivates them to purchase or what causes them to abandon their baskets when it comes to retail. Then we have behavioral data. So this could come from your email service provider or other analytics software showing you conversions and opens and purchases. Use this to target your most recently active customers with, what I would say would be, a drive to a loyalty offer. So try and get them to purchase again and to stay loyal, or target your competition entrants with a further discount after they've converted again. There's lots of things you can do, and it really, really depends on the company and on the sector. Then you have the slightly more advanced version, which is behavioral modeled data. So this is based on group behavior, things such as lifestyle and attitudes, and it allows you to make assumptions from what you already know. So when you think about the data you have and trying to drive insight, do you know that people within a certain postcode area tend to go to one particular event? Is there somewhere you can tie in your brand with that event? Or do you know that certain lifestyles can be grouped into a particular purchase behavior?
Yeah, and it ties in nicely with what we were talking around the business goals. It's defining those personas that you know and then fitting the segments around that from what you can know and then what you don't know, and then that's the areas that you want to glean more information around, and then you'll start learning from those personas as you move forward. But once you've got that starting point, start small, as we've said, then you can start learning with this kind of data.
Yeah, and it's okay to make assumptions from the data that you glean, and then sort of put them to the test with different tactics that you use and see whether your particular assumption stays true, and whether what you thought would motivate your audience actually does motivate them to convert. This level of segmentation begins to really take notice of the makeup of your customers. So what makes them tick? This is where we're at now. And it takes it a step further from observing what they do or they don't do in relation to your emails and website. And then plugging into external sources like social APIs, which Rob also alluded to. It takes your segmentation to an even deeper level. And it allows you to derive data about a person's online behavior based on their interactions. So, do they prefer discounts? Are they time constrained? When are they most active on different channels? How would they like to be communicated with? Are all questions that you can ask.
Excellent. And then sort of bringing it into the automated, we've had a look at some examples of our automated journeys so far, and just sort of bringing that together in some of the things to consider about building your progressive profiling as you go, and using intelligence that you already know that you're ingesting, and then what people are doing on the email journey. And it can fuel all marketing channels with metric intelligence. So if the email isn't doing what it's meant to do, it isn't driving that conversion, driving that business goal, then potentially we can use the data that's left to fire out, and we can send that to use a different channel, but we'll know that segment that, okay, that's not responding to email. Let's take that segment. So it's segmentation, and then using that with a different channel that potentially might work for them. For example, an SMS campaign. We touched on testing and agility, and it stands true for all of this, to learn with each send and be agile to unexpected results. Conditional content using the data intelligence, like with the Parkinson's example we looked at, is using that segmentation. So we've got a segment of people that need to see a certain bit of content. So you're building that in, and that's tying it back to the more advanced personalization that we spoke about right at the beginning. So we're creating these segments, and they're seeing a different experience in the content, or they're receiving a different campaign completely. And consider all input points for your automated journeys. Do they need to run sequentially? Have you worked this out in terms of, moving on to the second point about contradictory offers? Are people fitting into two? So start small to keep it simple. Post-it notes all over the desk. Get everything out that you want to do to start with. Get that working. Monitor as you go. And then, do these things need to run sequentially? Do they need to be real-time at the moment the data is received, or do you need to wait till certain dates? For example, with events, you can maybe run a campaign so people get through a welcome sequence, and then maybe wait till a certain point before an early bird cutoff, for example, and then these certain segments then will pass through to the next stage. And as we spoke about, consider tactics for non-engagement. What are you going to do with those people that aren't doing what you want them to do, aren't aligning to those business goals? That might be a completely different approach, or it might even be working alongside your other channels. And then just some basic examples of the automated journeys that a lot of you will be running already, and just consider what sort of segmentation you need to do to satisfy these. What information do you need to glean? Welcome programs, well, not much to start with. Nurture programs, which we'll look at an example of in a minute, and then developing abandoned baskets and favorites and so on. So we're gleaning that information, we're segmenting based on that behavior. And then personalization of business as usual email. So, okay, we can then use that information, like the Parkins example, to give them a better experience. And then moving on to the loyalty and the ratings and the reviews, to use advocates of our brand to then those that aren't doing it, it's the reactivation side of things. So considering against the business goals, the kind of automated journeys that you want to send, and then building in the goals of what you already know, and then what you need to know, what you don't know, what are the gaps in the knowledge to fulfill those requirements. And taking an example from Frugi, one of our clients who did a very successful campaign on nurturing. So they had two segments effectively of those that had purchased and those that had just subscribed. And they had a 70% open rate and a 71% pound average first purchase, which is very good compared to what they are already doing, and a 21% click to sale rate, which was fantastic. So they were sending people down a different journey based on, had they purchased before? No, okay, let's nurture them some more. Check again, have they purchased from there? And then hopefully bringing more and more purchases out of those just subscribers and interested folk, and turning them into a conversion, which is obviously their business goal.
And when you look at these campaigns, they don't need to be miles away from each other. With really simple tweaks to the copy, or using a different image, can make an impact. So when you see these, you don't necessarily need to put a lot of hours into your creative. You just need to know where to do the simple tweaks to make sure that the message sounds relevant to the persona or segment that you're appealing to.
Excellent, and we've got some sort of key takeaways which we've covered throughout this with our examples and some of the stats that we've brought up already. So in terms of the doing part, be agile and test, as we've said, we don't need to reiterate that one anymore, but consider all your database sources, where can you glean this information, and then segment according to the opt-in and what you're actually trying to achieve. Work backwards, work for the business goals, build some personas, and then understand what you need to know about them to give them the best offering based on what you know already, and then be willing to learn some more.
However, make sure you're not overcomplicating things. We've presented you with an abundance of things to consider, but make sure that you don't, at some point Rob said, don't create 100 different segments, because if you narrow that pool too much, then you're going to make sure that you might be taking people out of potentially important information. So keep it simple, and then advance as you see fit with your particular audience. So yeah, don't create too many segments, and also don't be afraid to start small. We weren't, even the really big companies had to start somewhere when they did really advanced segmentation. Netflix is an example, which is a lot of the times given for their artificial intelligence and how they suggest different movies and TV series and things. But even they started somewhere small in order to create what they have now.
Exactly, and then we were just sort of going back to don't create too many, but also make sure you don't isolate people. If people have been buying gifts at Christmas time, they might not be wanting to be buying those things all year round. So just be agile and think about when people are buying, what they're buying as well, so you can be more flexible around gift buying areas.
All right, so questions. It's time for our beloved question section. So just as we have a look at what has been submitted, bear in mind with us. Carl asked if the webinar would be available on demand. Yes, that will be sent via email at some point by the end of the week.
And how does Adestra modify the design of an email based on personalization? Well, we can use any flag, any content we know around that contact, we can use within the creative of an email to effectively say, if we know person, in a simplest term, if person is male, show this, if they're female, show this. And we can build that intelligence into an email template so that we're showing something different based on what we know about the each contact. And if we don't know something, then we would have a default something within the campaign. But we're happy to reach out if you want to talk more around that and how to do that within your campaigns. How long can I expect to take effect before I see increased ROI? Is one from Ian that's just come in as well. Well, Ian, it's basically the key is you're not going to, by segmenting, you're not going to overload people. You're not going to be sending loads more emails. You're just going to give them a better experience. So hopefully by doing that, you will start to see that experience a little bit more as time goes on. You should start to see a result. But it's all about being agile and testing from the point of view of getting those results out of your segmentation. What have we got here? Barry asks, where do I start? Well, start small, Barry, would be the answer to that one. What do you know already, and what can you glean? Can you start building up those personas around what you're actually trying to achieve? What have we got here? Do you recommend split testing even with segmentation, asks Raj?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Well, I'm a big fan of testing anyway, but yeah, even, as we were saying earlier, you're going to have to make assumptions about your audience, but you might not necessarily know if those assumptions are true. So by using split testing, you will be able to better identify what really motivates your audience.
Excellent. How are we doing here? We've got another one coming. What considerations around GDPR? Well, as we said, I mean, it's the profiling stuff. More to follow on that as we learn more, and we'll be publishing what we recommend on GDPR in due course when we all know.
And finally, the last one from Quentin. We don't have a CRM. How do you recommend we segment?
Well, what do you know? I mean, I'm guessing from that point of view that there's probably you're uploading data into your email marketing system manually, and using that, I guess, as the CRM system. So you can use your filtering tools within your system to then create those segments. And again, building up slowly from that point of view. So anything and around the emails that have been sent out, you can start to segment using the behavior, for example, as well as anything else that you've uploaded.
And I think that ties really well into actually a different question. So Yolan, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. He asked, when it comes to preference update, what do you do with those who haven't updated their preferences? Will never have 100% open and click-through rate. And that is completely true. And in those cases, yeah, you just have to find different sort of data insights like clicks and observed behavior to be able to segment accordingly.
I agree.
Make assumptions.
Yeah, it's never going to be perfect, and you can try something simpler for them. If you're seeing that the people aren't responding, is that what you're asking them too early or too much? Maybe make it a simpler approach like Pets Pajamas, where you're just clicking on an email and profiling on the pet type you had. Make it easy for them to do so. And I know we talked about click-through rate there, so yeah, you can use the more basic metrics like open rate to then start segmenting those that aren't doing what you want them to do, and those that are still not doing it, then yes, potentially you've got that segment, you've segmented, these are my non-active people, let's do something else with them. How frequently should you be asking for data, asked Isabel. But that's a good question. Agility around, what do you know already? What do you need to know to build those personas? Do you know enough to start that process and start testing? If you've got clear gaps, then you can drip feed it, and again it goes back to starting nice touch points to start with. Make it easy for them before throwing a massive great form at them. And how frequently? Well, again, once you need to know something else, then glean that information. If it's not something that's naturally coming in, like for example transactions, where they'll naturally come in and that's updating it for you, I think basically if there's something that's different that they're going to start receiving, something's changed your end, or you've got something new to say, then I think that's a good time to start doing it, to give them a bit of value around before asking them for something.
And actually, related to a point that Rob was making, I think you probably, as marketers, we can get a bit over-ego about what we want our customers to tell us. So maybe think about how you're going to use segmentation or how you use it at the moment, and prioritize the types of data that you need up front, the ones that are absolutely crucial in order for you to do the segmentation as you wanted. And then perhaps some of the other ones that don't make it to the first cut, make sure you ask them later on. And I guess testing out would be a good opportunity to see if you see your click-through rates decline, then you might be asking for data too soon or too much.
Excellent. We've got one more here from Ben. He says, you mentioned integrating with social for sign-ups and so on. Again, that's a wider picture around Twitter cards and methods that you can use to increase your data and segment through social sources. And do reach out to us if you want more information around that, because we've got lots of content on around what you can do around that, which would take more than the 7 minutes we've got left. Yes, so feel free to reach out for any of these questions or anything that you want us to expand on beyond what we've already touched on here.
Okay, well, unless any other question comes in the next 15 seconds, then I think that will be it for today. But thank you very much for submitting all these questions. It's really lovely to hear from marketers and what sort of type of challenges they have. And if you think of any more, or if you're listening to this as a recording, feel free to email marketing@adestra.com, and we'll be happy to follow up with some tips and advice. Otherwise, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon or morning, depending on where you're listening to us from.
Great. Good afternoon, everyone. Have a good day.
Have a good rest of the day. Goodbye.